All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. All three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I am reviewing the brand new book by Mark Lawrence, and it is titled The Book That Wouldn't Burn. So I love Mark Lawrence's work. I've got all of his books over here in mass market paperback. We've got all the trilogies set aside here. Got this trilogy, the Prince of Thorns trilogy. I got them all. Trust me, they're there. Well, we've got this new one in hardcover. I was interested in getting this in hardcover on release day to see what it was all about. And let's talk about the cover first, because I love graphic design and cover illustration. So let's give this cover a go over. And I think it's very elegantly done, very vastly different from the other covers of Mark Lawrence books. This has by the way, Mark Lawrence gets good cover art and good cover design every time a book comes out, including this one. An illustrator by the name of Tom Roberts did the cover. It looks just cool. It's like this library, this never-ending labyrinth of a library. I know I've got my plastic protective sheet over it, so you can't really see it that well, but trust me, it's seriously dope. So, before I get into the meat of the review, I just wanted to read the very, very short jacket copy here, because it gives us a pretty good basis for the book. So, two strangers find themselves connected by a vast and mysterious library containing many wonders and still more secrets. The boy has lived his whole life trapped within a book-choked chamber older than empires and larger than cities. The girl has spent hers in a tiny settlement out on the dust, where nightmares stalk and no one goes. The world has never even noticed them. That's about to change. Their stories spiral around each other across worlds and time. This is a tale of truth and lies and hearts, and the blurring of one into another, a journey on which knowledge erodes certainty, and on which, though the pen may be mightier than the sword, blood will be spilled and cities burned. So it's a pretty vague description of what's going on, but also very intriguing. Now, this book is, while it's quite unlike any of the other sort of grim, dark books that Mark Lawrence has written in the past, these are pretty much sword and sorcery, grim, dark, almost post-apocalyptic stories here. This is unlike that, but yet similar to it, and we're going to get into that a little bit. So it starts out with Lavera, and Lavera is a young girl living out in the dust, which is like the desert. It's like Tatooine, Luke Skywalker bleakness out in Tatooine, the dust, nothing much going on, a small community, and she lives out there. Lavera, her very name, she was named after a pesky desert weed. And like everything else that you're going to find in this book as you read it, everything, including the names of the characters and just about everything that's going on, has a double meaning. So keep that in mind. Now, in this dust, this desert bleak landscape where this small community resides, nobody ever really comes out to visit them. Well, they finally get some visitors, but they're not the type of visitors you want to see. These visitors are called sabers, and they come out of the bleak desert, and they watch these people come from the distance. They can see them, and I could just picture that scene in Lawrence of Arabia where the one guy is riding his camel from the very far distance, and it takes him forever to get there. And I was just kind of picturing that in my mind as these strangers come across the desert into this town, and they're like, oh my God, strangers. They've never had strangers visit before because they're so out of the way. Well, these sabers are not good dudes. They're actually kind of like described as beasts Dogmen is what they're called. I was just picturing kind of like werewolf type guys, and they do bad things. Once they get to this town, they do bad things. Lavera and all the children are taken captive by these beasts. What happens to the adults? We don't know. That's a mystery. And these kids are marched into the desert, through the desert towards a big city. Now, Lavera is with Katrin and Neela and a bunch of other kids, and they have this adventure. They meet one of probably my favorite character is this world-weary soldier that they kind of that's kind of marching them along. I won't say the sabers aren't the worst thing. Let's just say on this journey towards the city, the sabers that have taken them captive aren't the worst thing that could possibly happen to them, because worse things happen. And I won't get into that, but let's jump now from that storyline to, and that is a very gripping and heartbreaking start to the story. I was really entranced by that opening scene. Then we jump to a character named Evar, who is a young man in his early 20s, and he has been trapped in this massive library. He's lived his whole life in this massive library with other people. There's Clovis, who is kind of like the warrior of the group. There's another one. There's Mayland, who may or may not be dead. There's Starvel, who studies assassins, and another one. Gosh, the names escapes me. Karen, or something. Karis. I can't remember the name, but anyway, that character has a very sharp intelligence. So they're trapped in this library, this big, massive library that's painted on the cover, and there's different things in there. There's these porcelain-like robot-type creatures that are kind of guiding them through the library a little bit, mentoring them. Each chapter is got a chapter heading. Like you can see a little chapter heading here. Now these were fascinating because this is where I started to realize that this book was tied to all of the other Mark Lawrence books, especially when he starts quoting characters from these books in these chapter headings. Not only does Mark Lawrence quote characters from other books, but he quotes characters from our own world and people, and just made up characters. And he also quotes himself. Mark Lawrence also quotes himself. It's pretty cool. Like I said, there's hints of our own world in this book, much like in these books, which makes me think that all of these are tied together somehow. There's hints of time travel. This book is full of a lot of allegory. It's like a love letter to the power of storytelling, the power of books, the importance of libraries and knowledge. These porcelain robot kind of like assistant kind of creatures that are in the libraries with these people. Anyway, both storylines converge. Eventually they converge. Lavera from the dust and Evar trapped in the library. Eventually, of course, these stories converge and kind of this action-packed adventure filled with... This is a hard book to describe because it's kind of Mark Lawrence's musings on... Is everything in here allegorical or literal? It's like there's themes of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel and betrayal and life and death and truth, virtue, the sin of knowledge. The sin of knowledge, and the virtue of ignorance, which is prevalent in the world. It's like people. It's almost more, whether you're religious or secular. It's almost like religions. It's like they want people to be ignorant. They don't want people to question or doubt. Whether if you're a Democrat or a Republican, whatever party, whatever group, whatever tribe you belong to, they don't want you to question or doubt the tribe. It's like almost like the virtue of ignorance is and the sin of knowledge are converging here. And I think Mark Lawrence is trying to make a few points with this, that always going along with the faith and dogma and belief of your forebears is not, it's a recipe for, bad things. And but we are all trying to be controlled. The governments are trying to control us. The religions are trying to control us. The left is trying to control us. The right is trying to control us. The Trumps are trying to control us. The Bidens are trying to control us. And nobody knows, especially in a day where there's so much information, there's so much out there with Wikipedia and the internet and all social media, and everything has just, it's all out there, and it's sort of like allegorical to this massive library that we've got all information at the tips of our fingers, but yet as a whole it's just so confusing. And how do we sift through the lies? How do we, it's kind of what I got out of this book. Maybe everybody else is going to get something else. That's kind of what I got out of it. Anyway, I enjoyed the book. Action adventure, a lot of musings and philosophical musings, a lot of philosophical musings on life, government, religion, truth, knowledge, lies, all of that kind of boiled into this pretty cool action adventure story that's unlike anything you're ever going to read. It's just unlike, that's probably should have started with that. This is unlike any fantasy book you're ever going to read. Very good. I give it a 9.5 out of 10. And that is my review of this book.